Republican Senator John Kennedy weighed in on the debt ceiling debacle that's going on right now, negotiations, discussions, Republicans wanting to leverage the debt ceiling to push for spending cuts, even though spending cuts should happen when you're weighing spending, not weighing fulfilling your financial obligations. All of that has been discussed, but I want to take a look at a moment with Republican Senator John Kennedy appearing on Fox News and making a point about the debt. And then we'll respond to it. Very fascinating stuff here. Take a look.
If you're going to have a party, you have to pay the band. If you're going to borrow money, you have to pay it back. That's true as a moral principle and a principle of practicality. And you don't have to be a senior at Caltech to figure that out. Now here's the truth part. Congress had a spending party. More specifically, the House Democrats, not the House Republicans. The Senate Democrats and a whole lot of Senate Republicans had a spending party. I didn't vote to do it. I would have been happy with a couple of beers after work.
I don't know how that last sentence connects to what he was saying, honestly. Maybe I missed something. But let's just take this as an opportunity to discuss this myth that Democrats are the irresponsible spenders. They run up the debt and the deficit. Republicans have to go in there and clean up the mess. And you hear it all the time. And I was actually sitting, I should say, at a dinner last night with a friend talking about how it's almost impressive that Republicans, despite the facts not being on their side, have convinced so many people that they are better for the economy, which we know not true, and are more financially responsible with spending. They don't run up the deficit as much. And let's just go through a few pieces I've come across over time that kind of illustrates this. It is not the case, as this New York Times op-ed writes, that Democrats juice the economy by spending money and then leave Republicans to clean up the mess. Over the last 4 decades, in fact, Republican presidents have run up larger deficits than Democrats. Another piece here from Towards Data Science. While Republicans often claim that they are the more fiscally responsible party, my research suggests otherwise. Compared to Democratic presidents, Republicans are estimated to add between 0.75% and 1.2% more to the deficit as a percent of GDP each year they are in office. And then we'll look at one final chart here that shows you the deficit change, whether up or down, over time. And of course, the reason why we're speaking in terms of deficit is when you're looking at fiscal year after fiscal year, one president would come into power, and we refer to the presidential party who's in the White House because that's the easiest to understand. Congress could be any which way, but at the end of the day, things have to get signed off for the most part by the president, and he kind of holds authority over his party through that process, and so we can measure it that way. And what we see is actually Republicans, as this chart shows, have jacked up the deficit. Democrats have often decreased it, and because Biden's presidency is only halfway through, we don't have a whole lot of information to share on that yet. But as I was saying, the reason why we talk in terms of deficit is the debt is just accumulating. It's just on and on and on and on. It gets bigger and bigger. And so saying that this president was president when the debt was at its largest is kind of pointless, because even if they got in office and the debt increased 1 penny, then they would have the largest debt in American history. That's not really valuable. Whereas the deficit is understanding how much of the budget is spending beyond what's being brought in taxes, right? So that's how much each year is being spent beyond what the government is actually bringing in taxes. And that's where you can understand, is the Democrat decreasing that deficit and bringing down how much more we're spending, or are they increasing? And often Republicans are actually doing that more, are actually increasing the deficit more, contributing then compared to GDP and compared to their time as president, more to that scary big number that the Republican Party likes to fearmonger a lot about. So John Kennedy there, that's just giving you a historical context because we hear that talking point so often. And if you're in interpersonal conversations where it comes up that Republicans are better for the economy and they're better for the debt or whatever it might be. We just understand that's not factual. And even, especially with the economy example, as you dive into more and more specific bits of data, you realize how much of a trend this is, that under Democratic presidents, even if you control for Congress and different times based on crises, still Democratic presidents are better for the economy. And then we're looking here, better for the deficit. So these branding items that Republicans have been able to use so effectively are so often just so dishonest. And so right there, John Kennedy honestly should just think more about his own party, because clearly, historically, Democrats aren't the ones with the problem. Find me on Twitter, Luke Beasley.